Hey everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Hope everyone's doing great as usual, and appreciate you watching. So, I just wanted to share some thoughts. As always, I've been focusing on like UFOs and stuff a lot. So, I really believe that over the next few years, we're going to get closer and closer to full disclosure, to a point where, and the government's getting there. They are getting to a point where they're gradually, the US government and other world governments too, about, okay, yes, UFOs are real. And okay, first we don't know what they are. Now we kind of know what they are, and okay, is alien life out there? Well, we don't know, but okay, yes, we've recovered some bodies, like for example, so from spaceship crashes and that kind of thing. So it's like they're very slowly admitting to what we all kind of thought for decades now, and they're still very tight-lipped about it. And I think for good reason. But I wanted to pose this question and see what you guys thought as far as there's this idea that the US and other world governments are putting together what's called like a false flag operation. In other words, inciting a sort of fear and creating unity through fear of the unknown as far as aliens go. And I know Stephen Greer has talked about it before and mentioned that he's actually a strong proponent. He's against it. He's a proponent of like open disclosures and full disclosure. I'm not so. I've actually thought about this because I was too originally, but it's got to be done carefully if you think about it, because this is a massive paradigm shift, and existence of otherworldly and other interdimensional physical beings who also have a much more complete record of Earth's history. It will turn everything upside down. It'll change religion. It'll change our theories on existence and science and how we view things. And if you think about it, if we started communicating with aliens and they started explaining to us the true history of Earth and the universe and how everything works, they can't just unleash this to the world all at once. It's a very delicate situation on Earth, and these things have to be managed carefully. So now, initially, I used to be against the idea of, free energy for all. Like, the government has this knowledge. Why are they holding on to it? And also, like, full disclosure. Like, why don't they just tell us? And I was against, like, the false flag operation. Well, that's stupid. Just, tell us the truth, and then the world can kind of advance together. But over time, I've realized these are really complicated questions to answer. It's a great idea that everybody gets free energy. But have we fixed our geopolitical situations on Earth yet? No. So if everybody has access to free energy, we'll have rogue or terrorist states or groups have access to free energy, and they'll just do what they do free of charge. It's like these things have to be controlled and tempered, and even, between adversaries like, say, Russia and China, and then the West, or other adversarial relationships of other nations or groups of nations, it's like whoever has this technology will have the advantage over the other. So it's not as it's a little bit too over idealistic to just say, give us all free energy. It's just we're not there yet as a species in order to use that for the benefit of all, which is not. So now, as far as full disclosure, I was watching this guy, Luis Elizondo, the other day, and he seems like a plant. He's very much a government plant, and that's what I believe. The way he's disclosing and releasing information is as if he's either claims to be, or others claim he's a whistleblower, but he doesn't give full information. So, like, the whole point of blowing the whistle is to, share something that's going on that needs to be shared, that is being kept under wraps or hidden, and it's like he's only gradually giving information. It's kind of frustrating when you watch some of his interviews and stuff, because he shares some information, but he stops short of giving other information. One question that stood out in my mind was when they asked him, he was at a congressional hearing, multiple, and they said, well, are we in communication with these other alien civilizations? And he never answers the question directly. he just never comes out, because it's a simple yes or no. Are we communicating directly with them was the question. And then his answer was simply, well, we got to remember there's nonverbal communication. He never said, he makes that distinction, but he never goes into verbal communication. So he could have just simply said, yes, we're communicating with them, or no, we're not, but he avoids it completely. He just said, remember, there's nonverbal communication, meaning, if a Russian jet is in American skies, it could be an indication of a threat or a message they're sending, a show of force. Who knows? We have to analyze these things carefully. So all these UFOs we're seeing in the sky, we're trying to figure out what their exact intent is. And he says that's nonverbal communication. But he never circles back and says, yes, we're communicating directly with them, verbally, or no, we're not. And they have been for decades. And I've asked this question a lot, and I've gotten the same answer. And people like Dr. or Stephen Greer, who I put a lot of faith in, also says we've been communicating with them for decades. And so have a lot of other insiders. So, but I think the reason he's partially not answering that, it's so annoying to me when people just avoid the question. You could simply say, well, I can't speak to that, and that's good enough for me. But don't avoid it, or don't just pivot slightly and answer it differently without answering it at all, or answer it incompletely. But I think, to be fair, it would open up a whole can of worms, because if we literally said, yes, we're communicating directly verbally with them, now the questions come, well, what are they saying? What are you guys communicating about? Tell us. That confirms they're real and they can communicate with us. And is it in English? Can you understand each other? And how do they speak English? And what is their technology? And it opens up a ton of answers, including those that kind of delve into religious ideology. For example, they have technology to communicate telepathically, and with the afterlife, for example, and have machines that can do that, and have achieved the highest of these civilizations, that is, have achieved these massive levels of technological realization, and they have this this united, not ideology, they have a treatise or a paradigm that is existentially holistic, and it answers all the questions we've had on Earth. And it's not like they can just give this information freely to humans, our government, and it would create so much chaos if you think about it. So I understand why it's being released in small increments. Now I'm wondering, I'm sorry, before I forget, my whole question here is I wanted to put this question out there and see what are your thoughts on this whole false flag operation that the world governments are working together to do. Not all of them, but the US government, some of our allies are working together towards these ends, meaning present the aliens as a threat. And then that way, as we make our way out to outer space with Space Force and everything like that, at least we're united in that regards. And I was initially against it, but on one hand, it kind of makes sense. Okay, because we don't know what's out there. Now, I feel like I have my own belief and faith about what's out there, and I believe there are some massively advanced and evolved civilizations that have achieved infinite possibility in certain categories, like creating matter and post-scarcity and physical longevity. And we are in their presence. They're around here, and they have bases in places and things like that, but they don't make themselves known or seen. Good analogy is we still have very basic tribes in the Amazon rainforest living a very, very basic level of existence. And some of them have verbally said, we want to be left alone. This is how we want to live. So there aren't forces in there going and conquering them at gunpoint and saying, no, you have to assimilate. So it's kind of the same idea in that respecting groups or individual sovereign rights to the degree that they want to be left alone until it's necessary or relevant. And it's the same idea. So, and along those lines, and this is kind of important to point out too, so from what I understand, all this UFO activity in the sky and everything, over the past few decades, there have been a limited amount of times where it's actually this galactic federation that exists of super evolved beings. They remain unseen, and they don't abduct, and they don't do anything like that. When these things happen, it's rare, and it hasn't happened very much in the grand scheme of things. And when it does, it is either going to be one of two parties. It's either going to be the world governments that are doing this with their own experimentation with saucers and interdimensional craft, and even posing as aliens to create this false flag narrative that they're kind of putting together. Or the other answer is it is aliens, or whatever you want to call them. But it's not of the highest order of beings, the ones that are like the most highly evolved, that stay out of our affairs for the most part. It's going to be other civilizations that are more misguided or may have a more negative agenda. So, and they're real and they're out there too. So I think that's very interesting. But as far as setting up this idea now, and I've asked the questions. So apparently our US government, from what I understand, so they are in talks with, in this area and part of the galaxy and everything, there are representatives of very highly advanced civilizations, the one that stay hidden and that kind of mind their business until we begin to reach out to them. And now that they have given us the full list, from what I've told, of all the other civilizations that are out there and species and where they kind of fall on the scale of evolution, technological and spiritual evolution. And so we have the whole list, the U.S. government, as far as the good and the bad players and everything like that. It's like someone who's new to Earth, and we just give them a list of all our countries and ideologies and everything like that. So I understand that the government is still a little bit wary about who's who. I mean, how could we not be? This is like new territory for us. So it's important to know, I think, that we do have there are advanced civilizations with bases and spaceships around us right now that are more monitoring and observing versus attacking. And they have no reason to. They're so advanced, they have no reason to attack us or do abductions or take us over or control our minds. They just don't, if you think about it. It's like us observing nature or other human tribes, for example. And their intent is just made evident in the fact that they just haven't invaded us or enslaved us or destroyed us or anything like that. But for the world governments, it makes sense. It's like, how are we supposed to know? How do we know these guys are telling the truth, So as we make our way out into space and we start to share information with our fellow humans about what's out there, we have to do so carefully. And it almost makes sense that the best mindset is a careful one. Now, I'm still on the fence about how truth should be communicated. For example, like, we don't know what's out there. Here's a civilization. Here's what they're about. Here's another one. Here's what they're about. As we carefully share these truths with the world, or does it make more sense? Because humans, we're not mature enough to handle this sort of thing. If you think about it, we've got so many problems as it is on Earth. It takes a common enemy to unite people, or a common threat, and that's been proven before. And a shared threat or a shared enemy can really help people live with their differences under the banner of preservation or a group goal. So to paint the existence of aliens as a threat and set up certain incidents to where people are like, oh my God, aliens, they're real, but they're not friendly, then it gives us a united mentality as humans. Oh, it's us versus them. We need to be careful. And then as we come across the good civilizations and they prove themselves to be who they are, good and whatnot, and we're like, okay, we can kind of trust them. Like we trust, the British or like the Koreans, for example, the South Koreans, it's like, who's our allies? And as we kind of build that up, but do it with a wary eye. I don't know. I still don't. I understand the idea behind that, and just us being humans, it's like it makes sense if there's a psychological tactic to preparing us for exploration into outer space and other dimensions. So I'm not against this sort of thing, but I'm just wondering if it's the best possible idea. We don't want to be naive. But if we take all of our existing geopolitical tribalism into space, it's going to be messy unless we really come together as a planet. And this seems like it's almost necessary to do because we have to streamline that process. We're nowhere near fixing all our problems on Earth. So if we bring this stuff into outer space, then, it's like we need to do it as a planet. We need to be united to some degree. We need to evolve and come together if we're going to successfully start, making this a part of our reality. So anyways, I just thought it was an interesting thought. And again, I'm kind of on the fence, but I'm not necessarily against it, because if that's what it takes to get everybody on the same page, because we're out there now in space and they're starting to gradually release information to us about what's real out there. It's going to be a real game changer over the next 40 to 50 years, I think, as far as human evolution and technology and the reality of other off-world beings. So we'll see how it plays out. And there's seem to be key players out there trying to counter that message and let us know there's good civilizations. I think that's common sense too. There's always going to be good and bad. And that's my understanding of it too. There's good and bad, just like we have all our geopolitical issues here and tribalism here on Earth. It exists out there too. It stands to reason that it does, So anyways, fascinating stuff, and I'm really excited to see where this goes over the next few years or so. But there's my thoughts on it. I want to put it out there, see what your thoughts on it, or just kind of share that information. And thanks again for listening. So please take care, and we'll see you